Tell me, is there some society you know that doesn't run on greed? You think Russia doesn't run on greed? You think China doesn't run on greed? What is greed? Of course, none of us are greedy. It's only the other fellow who's greedy. The world runs on individuals pursuing their separate interests. The great achievements of civilization have not come from government bureaus. Einstein didn't construct his theory under order from a bureaucrat. Henry Ford didn't revolutionize the automobile industry that way. In the only cases in which the masses have escaped from the kind of grinding poverty you're talking about, the only cases in recorded history are where they have had capitalism and largely free trade.
This is Phil Donahue interviewing Milton Friedman. It is a long and fascinating. I mean, if this is one of your first introductions to Friedman, this is a great place to start. It's very palatable. It's very the reason why he was so great in what he did was because he was able to talk to people like us, people like me, people like you. Maybe some of you guys are a lot more intelligent, but the average person, and really get them to understand and to really boil it down to just a super, just very consumable and just very understandable. And you got it. Like when he spoke, you got it. You understood what he was saying, and it just makes sense. It just makes sense. And there's so many ideas that I've been exposed to through Friedman that, you know, he was the one that it was a really big pivotal part of my life. When I don't know if they're going to get into it in this particular video, but you know, so in this particular scenario, you know, Phil Donahue says, I believe the question is something to the effect of, you know, is it really good to run a country on greed? But he's equating capitalism with greed, and Donahue would do this a lot. He would be taking the devil's advocate part, because I'm pretty sure for the most part he agreed with Friedman, which is why, you know, he have him on and stuff like that. But he would play the devil's advocate and essentially say, why is capitalism good if it's promoting greed? And Friedman's assessment of it and his breakdown of it is, it was just beautiful. It's beautiful. There's no other way to describe it, right? He's essentially saying, well, what society doesn't run that way, right? It can be structured differently. And, you know, when you have, you know, communism or socialism, or, you know, choose whatever government you're looking for, there's always a greed element there. Now, the purveyors of the economic of the governmental system, whatever that may be, they're going to espouse and they're going to say that they're doing it for the betterment of the people and this and that and yada yada, and they're going to spout all these things. But in the end, they're going to be in control of the system. And when you have a communistic or socialist society, the people that control the system are the ones that have all the power, all of the power. You know, in a we're like crony capitalists at this point. Like we've kind of been bought off by a bunch of you know, corporations, and a lot. We're having a tough time right now. Like if you really wanted to get to the bare bones, purest sense of capitalism, free market stuff like that, I believe that probably works the best. We've gone beyond that because of the bureaucracy and the government getting involved and stuff like that. But on the whole, you know, at least like on the top, like the president's elected every 4 years, Congress gets elected every, you know, whatever, legislature, you know, there's 6 years for one, 2 years for the other. There are some checks and balances. They do insider trading, they make a lot of money. It's still a mess, right? But when you have, I mean, look at Putin, look at Xi Jinping. You know, these guys, they've been there for decades. They're not going anywhere, right? It's not like, you know, what's you know, they're trying to espouse these views and beliefs that, you know, that they're trying to help the common person when they're billionaires. I mean, granted, Trump is a billionaire, right? But you look at on the whole, on average, you know, our presidents become usually billionaires after they leave office. But you know, there's nothing. All that stuff pairs in comparison. Like when you look at these socialist communist countries, the top have all of the power. Like if you want to be in the inn, like it's over here. There's a lot of celebrities. There's athletes, stuff like that. You know, politicians, you know, they make their money and they do very well. But in these other countries, politicians, they're the kings.
If you want to know where the masses are worse off, worst off. It's exactly in the kinds of societies that depart from that. So that the record of history is absolutely crystal clear, that there is no alternative way so far discovered of improving the lot of the ordinary people that can hold a candle to the productive activities that are unleashed by a free enterprise system.
He always prefaces that. He'll always say that. I don't know if you caught what he said there. So far discovered. He always makes that point. Right? He always says, you know, there's nothing that comes close to raising the masses so far discovered than free market capitalism.
The only way in which you can redistribute effectively the wealth is by destroying the incentives to have wealth. And the question is, what is the way, what is the system which will offer those people who are so unlucky as to be born without good positions, what is the system which will offer them the greatest opportunity?
Well, one possible way of redistributing the wealth without affecting the incentives to earn as much income as possible is simply to have a 100% inheritance tax.
But
that won't affect the incentives. It's only after the person's dead anyway.
I beg your pardon. I'm afraid, I don't know the family you come from.
That was a pretty good joke. The crowd doesn't laugh right here. This is a really interesting question, right? He would do lectures. He would do an hour-long lectures, and then he would do Q&As afterwards. You know, it's amazing because like a lot of people have taken what he does. Everyone does this today, especially on the conservative side, on the libertarian side. People are still doing this today all the time, right? They give a lecture, they do a Q&A, and then they have opposing people come down. And again, you really don't see this much on the liberal side. You really don't, just because like their ideas are, and you know, sorry to say this, guys, but it's the truth. Their ideas are more feelings. Their ideas are more going with the wind and going with the flow and what sounds good as opposed to, you know, facts on the ground. So this young man poses the redistribution of wealth idea. He essentially is saying that, well, after the person dies, just redistribute all of their wealth, take everything from them. And Friedman, before this, he kind of dances around here because it is an interesting point that he makes, and he gets to a really fine point in checking this young man onto the realities of the situation.
I don't, but as you grow up, you will discover that this is really a family society and not an individual society. We tend to talk about an individualist society, but it really isn't. It's a family society. And the greatest incentives of all, the incentives that have really driven people on, have largely been the incentives of family creation, of family, of establishing their families on a decent system. What is the effect of 100% inheritance tax? The percent of 100.
And before he gets off, he's gonna skew a little bit away from this point, but this is something that I've been thinking about quite a bit. You know, I have a fair amount of children, various ages, and this is something that really starts to take hold of you as you grow and as you mature and as you start to look at your family as you see babies becoming toddlers, becoming teens, becoming adults. And you start to really ponder and think, like, what can I do for them? What can I really do for them? How can I help them? Because at this stage of the game, you know, I have brothers and sisters that are younger than me, but obviously older than my children. And I see them struggling quite a bit. Right? I see them with significant others, working jobs, not able to buy homes, not able to do the things that I was fortunate enough to do, taking a different path. And I don't want that for my children, you know. And it's a serious consideration to think of, how can I set myself up to give them, at the very least, equal to what I have. Not easy. It is not easy.
100% inheritance tax is to encourage people to dissipate their wealth in high living.
So I don't know if I stepped over that. He says one of the effects of having a 100% inheritance tax is to incentivize people to dissipate their wealth through high living. And then I believe the kid is going to say, "What's wrong with that?" And he's going to explain what's wrong with that very, very sharply.
What's the harm in that?
The harm in that is that where do you get the factories? Where do you get the machines? Where do you get the capital investment? Where do you get the incentive to improve technology? If what you're doing is to establish a society in which the incentive is for people who, if they by accident accumulate some wealth, to waste it in frivolous entertainment. You know, the thing is that the thing that is amazing that people don't really recognize is the extent to which the market system has, in fact, encouraged people and enabled people to work hard and sacrifice in what I must confess I often regard as an irrational way for the benefit of their children. One of the most curious things to me in observation is that almost all people value the utility which their children will get from consumption higher than they value their own. Here are parents who have every reason to expect that their children will have a higher income than they ever had, and they scrimp and save in order to be able to leave something for their children.
And during that time, that was 100% the truth. 100% the truth, right? Even though the society was formed in a certain way, economically, socially, that parents knew that their kids were going to do better than them. That was the norm. And this is one of the first times that in our little short history that doesn't seem like to be the case, right? The boomers pretty much ran roughshod over the country, and you have people in their 20s and 30s right now. They're having a rough time. They cannot expect to make the same, relatively speaking, as their parents and grandparents. It's gonna be a rough road, right? And that's why I think we may have to refocus our efforts on, as parents and as adults, to like redirect ourselves back into thinking that, man, we really got to get this shit together. We got to help these guys out. They need help. They need help. And if we want to grow a big family and we want everybody to be prosperous, they're going to need a little bit more of a leg up than maybe I had somebody in, mid 40s, right? They're going to need, if you're in your 30s and in your 20s and you don't have, you didn't win the lotto on a job, not necessarily the lotto, maybe you worked really hard or did the right things, but on the whole, if you're the average person, right, in the 20s and 30s, you're not in the same position as a generation or two ago. That's just the facts.
I think you are sort of like a bull in a china shop. If you talk about the 100% inheritance tax having no incentive effects, it would destroy a continuing society. It would destroy a society.
Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. If you're still here, please hit the subscribe button. I should have done that a long time ago. As my chart here says, please remember to say subscribe. So if you can't subscribe, it costs you absolutely nothing. Subscribe, hit that notification bell so you see when I come out with new videos. If you want to follow me on X, 6283 Talk on the X. I'm John Soto. Thanks a lot. We'll see you again in the next video.